Queen Seraphine had ruled the Valorian Empire for 47 years, her reign marked by expansion, stability, and unquestioned genetic purity. The Valorians had maintained their bloodlines for 3 millennia, their power rooted in the belief that their genetic perfection was divine mandate. Every succession had been flawless, every heir genetically verified, every generation stronger than the last. Until now. She stood in the royal medical wing, staring at holographic displays that showed her daughter's genetic profile in merciless detail. The chief geneticist, Lord Varax, hovered nearby, his own iridescent markings, the bioluminescent patterns that covered all Valorian skin, pulsing with the muted colors of concern. "There's no possibility of error?" Seraphine asked, though she'd asked this question 17 times already. "None, Your Majesty. We've conducted every test known to Valorian science. Princess Elindra's reproductive genetics carry a mutation we've never seen. Her systems are healthy, functional, but—" He hesitated, "incompatible with Valorian male genetics. She cannot conceive with any male of our species." "Cannot, not unlikely, cannot." "Correct, Your Majesty. The incompatibility is absolute." Seraphine closed her eyes, her own markings shifting through colors of despair she couldn't quite control. Her daughter, her only child, her sole heir, was Barren. 3,000 years of unbroken succession, ended not by war or assassination or political failure, but by random genetic mutation. "What are our options?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Adoption from lesser bloodlines, though that would invite challenges to legitimacy. Genetic manipulation, though our laws strictly forbid. Political marriage," Lady Thessara interrupted, sweeping into the chamber with her usual political pragmatism. "If the princess cannot continue the bloodline, she can at least strengthen the empire through alliance." "Alliance with whom?" Seraphine demanded. "The Human Confederation. They've been seeking closer ties with us for years. A royal marriage would grant them status, while giving us their military and technological resources." Marriage to a human. The idea was almost absurd. Humans were allies, yes, but they were also considered somewhat lesser. Their technology was impressive, their adaptability remarkable, but they lacked the genetic refinement of Valorians. "It's not ideal," Thessara admitted, "but consider the alternative. Elindra remains unmarried, succession crisis intensifies, the noble houses position themselves for power grabs. Civil war becomes inevitable. At least this way, she serves purpose. The marriage produces no heirs, but it produces alliance." Seraphine saw the logic, cold as it was. Her daughter's barrenness was disaster, but it could be leveraged into political advantage if handled correctly. "Summon Elindra," she commanded. "She must be told." Princess Elindra arrived within the hour, her bearing showing the quiet dignity she'd maintained since learning of her condition 2 months ago. She was beautiful by any standard, silver hair that flowed like liquid moonlight, eyes containing swirling galaxy patterns unique to royal bloodline, markings that pulsed with gentle luminescence. But her markings were muted now, dimmer than they should be. The constant shame of her diagnosis had dulled her inner light. "Mother," she greeted formally, "you summoned me." "I did." Seraphine gestured for her to sit. "We need to discuss your future." "What future?" Bitterness crept into Elindra's voice despite her control. "I am barren. In our society, that makes me worthless." "You are not worthless. You are princess of the Valorian Empire." The queen's voice was firm. "And as such, you will serve the empire's needs." "How?" "By sitting quietly while noble houses fight over succession. By watching everything we've built crumble because my genetics failed. By marrying." Elindra's markings flared with surprise. "Marrying whom? What Valorian male would accept barren bride?" "Not Valorian, human." Silence fell like stone. "Human," Elindra repeated flatly. "The Human Confederation has requested closer alliance for years. Your marriage to one of their diplomats would cement ties while—" "While what?" "While disposing of your defective daughter by giving her to aliens." Elindra stood, her markings now showing hurt mixed with anger. Is that your plan, mother? Can't produce heirs, so marry her off to species that can't either way. Elindra, do you have any idea what you're asking? Marriage to human means permanent exile from everything I know. They live on their colony worlds, away from the Empire's center. I would be curiosity at best, disappointment at worst. You would be serving your people. I've served my people my entire life. I've trained for rule, studied diplomacy, prepared myself for the throne. And now because of genetic accident, I'm to be discarded like damaged goods. The queen's markings flared with her own pain, though she controlled it quickly. This is not what I wanted for you, but we must be practical. Without heirs, the succession. The succession is more important than your daughter's happiness. Yes, I understand that perfectly. They faced each other, mother and daughter, both wounded by circumstances neither chose. Finally, Seraphine spoke more softly. Elindra, I know this is not the future you envisioned. It's not what I envisioned for you either. But you are royal, and royals do not have the luxury of putting personal desires above duty. This marriage may not give you children, but it will give the Empire strength. It will prevent the civil war that would otherwise destroy everything our ancestors built. Elindra's markings dimmed further. And what of me? What becomes of the Barren princess married off to an alien? You live, you serve. You find whatever happiness you can within the constraints given. The queen's voice held resignation born of her own arranged marriage decades ago. It's what we do. Days later, Elindra found herself in formal meeting with her intended husband. Alexander Mercer was not what she expected. He was tall by human standards, with intelligent brown eyes that showed both warmth and sharp awareness. His bearing was confident without arrogance, his manner respectful without being servile. Princess Elindra, he greeted with a bow that showed he'd studied Valorian customs. I'm honored to meet you. Ambassador Mercer. She kept her voice neutral, her markings carefully controlled to show nothing. You understand the nature of this arrangement. I do, a political marriage to strengthen alliance between our peoples. He met her eyes directly. I've also been informed that you cannot have children. I want you to know that doesn't change my willingness to enter this marriage. Children aren't everything. Easy for him to say, she thought bitterly. He hadn't built his entire identity around being heir to ancient dynasty, only to have that identity stripped away by genetic defect. You are kind, she said without feeling. The marriage will proceed then. They spent the following weeks in formal courtship, required by tradition even when the outcome was predetermined. Alexander proved himself intelligent, culturally sensitive, and genuinely interested in understanding Valorian ways. He asked thoughtful questions, remembered details she mentioned, and never once treated her as lesser for her condition. A small part of her appreciated this, though she kept that appreciation buried beneath her grief. The wedding was grand affair, as royal weddings must be. Dignitaries from both species attended. The ceremony combined Valorian bonding rituals with human vows, creating something hybrid that satisfied neither tradition fully. Elindra went through the motions in beautiful gown that couldn't brighten her dimmed markings. When Alexander took her hand to complete the human portion of vows, his touch was gentle, respectful, almost tender. She barely felt it. After the ceremony, Queen Seraphine announced their assignment. You will serve as joint ambassadors to Meridian Colony. The posting will strengthen human-Valorian relations while giving you space to. She paused. Adjust to your new circumstances. Exile, in other words. Far from the court where Elindra's barrenness wouldn't embarrass the royal family. As they prepared to depart, Elindra took final look at her home world through the shuttle's viewport. The glittering cities, the twin suns, the genetic gardens where bloodlines were carefully curated for millennia, all of it receding as she flew toward unknown future. Alexander sat beside her, giving her space to grieve. His presence was unobtrusive but steady. I know this isn't what you wanted, he said quietly as the planet disappeared from view. "No, it isn't. For what it's worth, I intend to be good partner to you. Not just politically but personally, if you'll let me." She didn't respond, her markings showing only muted colors of loss. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the grief and shame, a tiny spark of curiosity flickered. This human had been kind when he had no obligation to be. He'd accepted her defect without judgment. He seemed to genuinely want to make this forced arrangement into something bearable. Perhaps exile wouldn't be as terrible as she feared, or perhaps it would be worse. Only time would tell. Meridian was beautiful in its isolation. The colony world orbited a calm yellow star, its surface covered in lush forests and crystalline lakes. Human and Valorian settlers had established joint community here, experiment in cooperation that had been moderately successful. Elindra and Alexander's ambassadorial residence sat on a hill overlooking the main settlement. It was comfortable, spacious enough for two people maintaining careful distance, well appointed with both human and Valorian amenities, surrounded by gardens that bloomed with hybrid flowers. For the first months, they existed in parallel rather than together. They shared meals, discussing diplomatic matters in professional terms. They attended official functions as united front, presenting picture of successful alliance. They slept in separate chambers, their marriage existing only on documentation. Elindra's markings remained dim, her grief over her lost future manifesting as quiet withdrawal. She was cordial to Alexander but kept emotional walls firmly in place. He represented everything she'd lost, potential for normal marriage, children, succession that would never be. Alexander, to his credit, didn't push. He was patient in ways that sometimes frustrated her. Shouldn't he demand more from this marriage? Instead, he focused on being good partner in practical sense. He handled difficult diplomatic situations with skill, represented their union well in official capacities, and gave her space she seemed to need. "You're remarkably accepting of this situation," she commented one evening 6 months into their marriage. He looked up from the human novel he was reading. "What would resistance accomplish? We're married. That's not changing. I can either resent the circumstances or make the best of them. And you choose making the best. I choose trying to build something meaningful from what we've been given." He set the book aside. "Elindra, I know you didn't choose me. I know this marriage represents loss for you. But I'd rather work toward finding some happiness together than spend our lives in mutual misery." "Happiness," she repeated. "You think happiness is possible in forced marriage between incompatible species? I think we won't know unless we try." She didn't respond, but his words lingered in her mind as she went to her chambers. Months continued passing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began shifting. Elindra started noticing Alexander's small kindnesses, how he'd learned which Valorian foods she preferred and ensured they were available, how he'd studied her language enough to pronounce her name properly, something even some Valorians got wrong, how he'd remember things she mentioned casually and follow up on them later. "You're a good man," she told him one night after he'd skillfully diffused a tense diplomatic situation. His eyes showed pleased surprise. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. It's simply truth. You've handled this assignment, this marriage, with more grace than I have. You've had more to adjust to. I chose to accept this posting. You didn't choose any of it." "No, but perhaps I could have handled it better." They talked longer that night than any previous evening, not about diplomacy or official matters, but about themselves. Alexander told her about his childhood on Earth, his fascination with alien cultures, his belief that understanding between species could prevent conflicts. Elindra found herself sharing, too, her childhood in the palace, the pressure of being sole heir, the crushing weight of her diagnosis. "When they told me I was barren," she said, her markings dimming with the memory, "I felt like I'd been erased. My entire worth was tied to continuing the bloodline. Without that ability, what was I? You're intelligent, educated, skilled in diplomacy, compassionate despite your reserve, Alexander said firmly. You're a complete person, Elindra. Your value isn't determined by reproductive capability. Easy for a human to say. Your species doesn't build entire civilizations around genetic succession. No, but we have our own ridiculous ways of determining people's worth. Trust me, humans are experts at reducing individuals to single characteristics and judging them for it. She almost smiled. Perhaps our species aren't so different. Perhaps not. After that night, their relationship shifted. They spent more evenings in conversation, discovering shared interests and complementary viewpoints. Elindra began appreciating Alexander's perspective, different from hers but no less valid. His human way of seeing things challenged assumptions she'd never questioned. Her markings started brightening slightly when he was near. A year into the marriage, their relationship had become genuine partnership. Not romantic, neither had crossed that boundary, but friendship built on mutual respect and growing affection. Then came the morning Elindra woke feeling ill. Probably something from last night's diplomatic dinner, she told Alexander, declining breakfast. Those meridian shellfish never quite agree with me. But the illness persisted. Day after day, she woke nauseated. Fatigue settled into her bones. Her markings behaved strangely, flickering through colors she couldn't control. You should see a physician, Alexander urged after a week of symptoms. It's nothing, probably stress from the upcoming trade negotiations. Elindra, please, if something is wrong, we should know. She agreed reluctantly, more to ease his worry than from concern for herself. The colony's medical facility was modest but competent, staffed by both human and Valorian practitioners. Dr. Reeves, the human physician on duty, examined her with professional thoroughness. I'd like to run some additional tests, he said, his expression oddly neutral, just to rule out certain possibilities. What possibilities? Standard procedure, please wait here. He returned an hour later, his face showing barely contained shock. Princess Elindra, he said carefully, I've run these tests 3 times. The results are consistent. What results? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong. He took a breath. You're pregnant. The world tilted. That's impossible, Elindra said when she could speak. I'm barren. Every geneticist in the Empire confirmed it. I cannot conceive. Cannot conceive with Valorian males, Dr. Reeves corrected gently. But your husband is human. It appears that human Valorian genetics are compatible in ways that pure Valorian genetics are not. How can this be? I honestly don't know. This is unprecedented. But the tests are clear. You're approximately 8 weeks pregnant with what appears to be healthy hybrid fetus. Elindra sat in stunned silence, her markings flashing through colors so rapidly they almost strobed. Fear, disbelief, hope, terror, emotions she'd buried under layers of resignation all surging to the surface at once. Pregnant. She was pregnant. The Barren princess was carrying a child. She left the medical facility in daze, barely aware of her surroundings. Her feet carried her home automatically, her mind spinning with implications too vast to process. Alexander was in the garden when she arrived. He looked up with concerned expression. What did the doctor say? Is something wrong? Elindra stared at him. This human she'd been forced to marry. This man who'd been unfailingly kind despite her coldness. This person who had somehow given her the one thing she'd been told she could never have. I'm pregnant, she said, and the words felt impossible even as she spoke them. Alexander went completely still. What? Pregnant with child, your child, our child. Her voice rose almost hysterical. I'm barren, every expert said so, but apparently human genetics don't care about Valorian impossibilities. I'm pregnant, Alexander. His face transformed through shock, disbelief, and then pure joy. We're a baby. A baby, she confirmed, and suddenly she was crying. Tears she hadn't allowed herself since her diagnosis, since her forced marriage, since her exile. All of it released in flood of emotion that she couldn't control. Alexander crossed to her in 3 strides, gathering her in his arms. It's okay, I've got you. I don't understand how this is possible, she sobbed against his chest. I don't either, but it's real. Elindra, we're going to have a child. She clung to him, this human husband she'd never wanted, and felt something shift fundamentally in her heart. He was holding her with such gentleness, such joy, such protective care. His happiness wasn't political, it was genuine emotion at the prospect of fatherhood. When her tears finally subsided, she pulled back to look at him. His eyes were wet too. You're happy, she said wonderingly. Incredibly happy, aren't you? I'm terrified. What if something goes wrong? What if the geneticists were right in some way we don't understand? What if I lose this child after finally having hope? He cupped her face gently. Then we face that together. Whatever happens, we're partners. We'll get through it together. Together? When had they become that? The pregnancy was difficult. Hybrid gestation was completely uncharted territory. The colony's medical facilities did their best, but they were working blind. Elindra experienced complications that terrified them both, strange fluctuations in the fetus's development, times when the baby's heartbeat seemed to struggle finding rhythm between 2 species patterns. There were nights when they feared the worst, when it seemed the impossible miracle might be ripped away as cruelly as it had been given. Through it all, Alexander was her rock. He sat with her during every medical appointment. He held her hand through every scare. He learned Valorian relaxation techniques to help her manage stress. He converted one of their spare rooms into nursery, painting it with colors that would appeal to both human and Valorian infant vision. And in doing so, he slowly claimed her heart. Elindra found herself seeking his presence, her markings warming to soft glows when he was near. She began seeing him not as symbol of her failure, but as partner who'd stood by her through impossible circumstances. His steady presence, his genuine care, his unwavering support, these things broke through walls she'd built. I think I'm falling in love with you, she told him one night, 7 months into her pregnancy. They lay together in what had become their shared bed. Sleeping separately had stopped making sense months ago. He turned to her, his expression showing careful hope. You think? I know, I love you, Alexander. This marriage I never wanted has become everything. He kissed her then, gentle and deep. I've loved you for months, watching you, learning you, seeing the person beneath the princess. I never said anything because I didn't want to pressure you. Always so patient. Always. Especially for you. Their daughter was born on a clear spring night. Lyra, they named her, meaning harmony in both human and Valorian languages. She was perfect. Silver hair like her mother, warm brown eyes like her father. Small pointed ears that showed her Valorian heritage. Their family was complete. We should tell someone, Alexander said one evening as they watched their children play in the garden, Lyra at 3, Kale at 1. Your mother should know she has grandchildren. Elindra's markings flickered with uncertainty. What if they take the children for study? What if the Empire sees them as specimens rather than people? They're royal heirs. The bloodline your mother thought had ended, it hasn't. These are her grandchildren. That's what I'm afraid of. The political implications, the scientific interest, the attention. I understand, but hiding them forever isn't possible. And don't they deserve to know their heritage? He was right, as he often was. Their children were half Valorian. They had the right to know that heritage, to meet their grandmother, to understand their place in galactic history. Let's wait, Elindra decided, until they're older, strong enough to handle attention. Alexander agreed. They had no way of knowing that Queen Seraphine's visit would force the issue far sooner than they'd planned. The announcement arrived via official diplomatic channels. The Queen would tour the outer colonies, including Meridian. She would visit her daughter as part of the tour. Elindra and Alexander read the message together, then looked at their children playing innocently nearby. She'll see them, Elindra said. There's no way to hide them during an extended royal visit. Would you want to hide them? Alexander asked gently. She thought about her children, Lyra's bright intelligence, Kale's thoughtful nature. They were miracles, proof that the universe had plans beyond what scientists could predict. No, she said finally, they deserve to be acknowledged. They're not shameful secrets, they're gifts. Then we introduce them properly. Show your mother that her barren daughter produced the impossible. Elindra took his hand, her markings glowing with love and determination. We do this together. Always together. Whatever came next, the Queen's reaction, the Empire's response, the galaxy's attention, they would face it as they'd faced everything else, united. Their family was worth fighting for. Queen Seraphine's shuttle descended toward Meridian with all the ceremony befitting imperial presence. The vessel was magnificent, sleek Valorian design that seemed to capture starlight itself, royal insignias gleaming on its hull. Elindra stood at the landing platform, Alexander beside her, both dressed in formal attire that blended Valorian and human styles. Their children were home with a trusted caretaker, waiting for the moment of revelation. Nervous? Alexander asked quietly. Terrified, she admitted. 5 years since I've seen her. 5 years of silence broken only by diplomatic formalities, and now I'm about to shatter everything she thinks she knows. Your mother loves you. That has to count for something. Does it? She sent me away when I became inconvenient. Love has limits for royalty. The shuttle landed with precision. Royal guards emerged first, taking positions with practiced efficiency. Then came Lady Thessara, the Queen's political advisor, followed by Lord Varax, the geneticist whose diagnosis had set everything in motion. Finally, Queen Seraphine herself descended the ramp. The years had touched her, though she carried them with regal grace. Her silver hair was more pronounced, her bearing slightly less rigid than Elindra remembered. But her markings still showed the controlled patterns of powerful ruler, giving nothing away. She approached her daughter with measured steps. Elindra, the Queen's voice was formal. You look well, mother. Elindra executed perfect courtesy bow. Welcome to Meridian. And Alexander Mercer. The Queen inclined her head to him. You have performed your diplomatic duties admirably. Reports speak highly of your work here. Thank you, Your Majesty. We've found Meridian welcoming. Formal pleasantries exchanged, the Queen gestured. Shall we proceed to your residence? I wish to see how you've established yourselves. They walked toward the hill where their home waited, the distance giving them time to re-establish familiarity after years apart. The Queen asked about diplomatic achievements, trade relations, colony development. Safe topics that required no emotional vulnerability. As they approached the residence, Elindra's heart rate increased. Inside that house were 2 children who would change everything. The door opened before they reached it. Mama, Mama, you're back. Lyra, 5 years old and unable to contain her excitement, came running out. Her silver hair streamed behind her, her markings glowing with happy anticipation. Behind her, 3-year-old Kale followed more carefully, his galaxy pattern eyes wide with curiosity at the strangers. Time stopped. Queen Seraphine froze mid-step. Her entire body went rigid as statue, her markings, usually so controlled, exploding into chaotic patterns of shock. Colors cycled through her skin so rapidly that it looked almost like malfunction. Behind her, Lord Varax made strangled noise. Lady Thessara's face drained of color. The royal guards exchanged looks of utter disbelief. Mama! Lyra reached Elindra, hugging her legs with childish enthusiasm. Kale reached Alexander, who lifted him with familiar ease. The Queen still hadn't moved. This. Her voice came out strangled. This is not possible. Elindra took a breath and knelt beside her daughter. Lyra, say hello to your grandmother. She's my mother. Lyra looked at the Queen with bright curiosity. Hello, grandmother. Mama talks about you sometimes. The simple greeting seemed to break something in the Queen. She made sound that was almost a sob. Mother, Elindra said gently, these are your grandchildren. Lyra is 5, Kale is 3. Grandchildren, the Queen repeated, the word sounding foreign. But you cannot. You were diagnosed. Lord Varax assured me. The geneticist stepped forward, his markings showing scientific disbelief. Your Majesty, this should be impossible. The princess's mutation makes Valorian conception absolutely impossible. I verified this countless times. The genetics are incompatible. And yet, Elindra said with quiet pride, here they are. Alexander shifted Kale in his arms. Perhaps human genetics work differently. The mutation that prevents Valorian conception apparently has no effect on human compatibility. Lady Thessara quickly supported the queen, who seemed unsteady. Your Majesty, perhaps we should move inside. This news is considerable. They proceeded into the residence, the queen's eyes never leaving her grandchildren. She moved like someone in a dream, her markings still showing chaotic shock. Inside, in the comfortable living room, the queen finally sank into a chair. Lyra and Kale, sensing the tension but not understanding it, stayed close to their parents. Explain everything, the queen demanded, her voice strained. When did this happen? How did you keep this secret? Why did you not inform me immediately? Elindra took a seat across from her mother, keeping Lyra close. When I became pregnant 5 years ago, we were as shocked as you are now. The colony's medical facilities confirmed it but couldn't explain it. We chose to keep it private initially because we didn't know if the pregnancy would survive. Hybrid gestation is unprecedented. And when it did survive, we were afraid, Mother. The political implications, the scientific scrutiny, the attention that would be forced on our children. We wanted to give them normal childhood. Normal childhood. The Queen's voice rose. They are royal grandchildren, heirs to the Valorian throne, and you hid them like shameful secrets. Elindra's markings flared with defensive anger. You married me off like damaged goods, Mother. Sent me to the farthest colony because my barrenness embarrassed the court. You never once visited in 5 years. I didn't think you'd care about my children when you barely cared about me. The accusation hung heavy. The Queen's markings shifted through guilt, anger, pain, emotions she usually kept suppressed. I did what was necessary for the Empire, she said finally. Your barrenness threatened everything. My barrenness, Elindra interrupted. That apparently wasn't barrenness at all. Just incompatibility with our own species. How ironic that the defect you sent me away for is what allowed me to have what pure Valorians couldn't give me. Silence fell. The Queen looked at her grandchildren again, really looked. Lyra had approached cautiously, her intelligent eyes studying the Queen with characteristic thoughtfulness. She had Elindra's silver hair, but it was streaked with her father's darker tones. Her markings were fainter than pure Valorian but definitely present. Her ears were pointed but smaller than typical. Kale remained in Alexander's arms, his galaxy pattern eyes watching everything. His features blended his parents' genetics in perfect harmony. They were beautiful, healthy, impossible. May I, the Queen's voice softened, losing its imperial command, may I hold them? Elindra nodded, guiding Lyra forward. The child approached with openness, unaware of the weight of the moment. The Queen lifted her granddaughter carefully, as if holding precious crystal. Lyra touched the Queen's face with small fingers. Your skin sparkles like Mama's, the child observed. Yes, the Queen whispered. It does. Tears formed in the Queen's eyes, tears she hadn't allowed herself in decades of rule. Her markings shifted to colors of pure wonder, joy, and dawning recognition of what these children meant. They're beautiful, she breathed. They're actually real. Lord Varax, recovering from his shock, stepped forward with scientific urgency. Your Majesty, we must study this phenomenon. The genetic implications are enormous. If human Valorian hybrids are possible despite incompatibilities, these are not specimens, Elindra cut in sharply. They are my children. Your great-grandnephew and niece, if you want to be technical. Of course, Varax said quickly. But surely you understand the scientific significance. We must understand how this happened. We understand how, Alexander said calmly. We just don't understand why. Human genetics apparently complement Valorian in ways you didn't know. The mutation that prevented conception with your males has no effect on human compatibility. The queen, still holding Lyra, looked at her son-in-law with new eyes. You have given my daughter happiness I never thought she'd have, and given my bloodline continuation I believed impossible. I've given our family love, Alexander replied. The science is secondary. Perhaps, the queen murmured. Perhaps that is where we Valorians have erred, placing genetics above love. Kale squirmed to be let down, and Alexander set him on his feet. The boy toddled toward his grandmother, clearly deciding she passed his inspection. Up, he demanded with childish authority. The queen looked to Elindra for permission. At her daughter's nod, she lifted Kale as well, now holding both grandchildren. For a moment she was not Queen Seraphine, ruler of 12 star systems. She was simply grandmother, meeting grandchildren she'd never expected to exist. Her markings glowed with warmth that had been absent for years. They're miracles, she said softly, impossible miracles. They're our family, Elindra corrected gently, and we've built something beautiful here, Mother. Not what you planned, not what I expected, but beautiful nonetheless. The queen looked at her daughter, really looked, and saw someone transformed. Not the bitter, dimmed princess she'd sent away, but a woman glowing with maternal love and marital contentment. Her markings were bright, healthy, radiating happiness that had been absent since her diagnosis. I see that, the queen acknowledged. You found what I couldn't give you. You gave me Alexander. Unwittingly, yes. But he turned out to be greatest gift you ever gave me. Alexander moved to stand beside his wife, his hand finding hers naturally. The queen noticed how their movements synchronized, how their bond was visible in every gesture. I have much to consider, the queen said finally, much to understand, and many apologies to make. She looked at her grandchildren in her arms, these impossible beings who represented everything she'd given up hope for. But first, she smiled, genuine smile that transformed her stern features, I would like to know my grandchildren if you'll allow it. They would like that, Elindra said, and so would I. The political implications, the scientific significance, the dynastic ramifications, all of that would need addressing. But for now, in this moment, there was just family reuniting, wounds beginning to heal, and the promise of understanding that could reshape everything. The queen had come expecting to find her barren daughter living quiet diplomatic life. She'd found miracles instead, and everything would change because of it. The days following the queen's arrival were whirlwind of activity. Medical examinations were conducted on the children with Elindra and Alexander's reluctant permission. Lord Varax and his team approached the task with scientific fervor that occasionally needed tempering. These are children, not laboratory specimens, Elindra reminded them sharply when their testing became too invasive. Of course, Your Highness, Varax apologized, but surely you understand the significance. The genetic data alone could revolutionize our understanding of species compatibility. The results, when compiled, were staggering. Human genetics carry what I can only describe as adaptive compatibility, Varax explained during formal presentation to the Queen. They don't force their genetic template, they complement existing structures. The princess's mutation that prevented Valorian conception becomes non-issue when paired with human DNA. In fact, it appears to enhance certain traits. Enhance how? The Queen asked. The children show hybrid vigor, increased immune response, enhanced neurological development, stronger physical constitutions. They're not weakened versions of either species, they're potentially superior combination. The implications sent ripples through everyone present. If this is true, Lady Thessara said slowly, then humanity represents genetic resource of incalculable value, not dilution of bloodlines but strengthening of them. And my daughter, the Queen said quietly, whom we called Barren, may have carried key to our species' evolution all along. The political ramifications were enormous. The Queen spent hours in private communication with her advisors back in the Empire, planning how to present this discovery. The revelation that royal heir, previously written off, had produced healthy hybrid children would change everything. But between the political maneuvering, something more important was happening. Queen Seraphine was falling in love with her grandchildren. She spent every possible moment with them, her stern imperial demeanor softening in their presence. Lyra, bright and curious, absorbed the stories her grandmother told about Valorian history. Kale, quieter but observant, studied the queen with those galaxy-pattern eyes that missed nothing. One evening, Elindra found her mother in the garden with the children, teaching them traditional Valorian meditation techniques. Their markings respond beautifully to emotional regulation training, the queen said, noticing her daughter's approach. Lyra has natural talent for it. She has natural talent for everything, Elindra replied with maternal pride. She does. The queen was quiet for a moment. I missed this with you, your childhood. I was always so focused on preparing you for rule that I forgot to simply enjoy you as my daughter. You did what you thought was necessary. I did what was expected of a queen. Those aren't always the same thing. Seraphine met her daughter's eyes. I owe you an apology, Elindra, several actually. Mother, let me say this, I need to. The queen's markings showed rare vulnerability. When I arranged your marriage, I saw you as problem to be solved. Your barrenness threatened the succession, and I prioritized that crisis over your happiness. I sent you away because your condition reminded me of my failure, not yours but mine. I'd failed to protect you from genetic accident I couldn't prevent, so I sent you far from sight where I wouldn't have to face that failure daily. Elindra's eyes filled with tears. I thought you'd abandoned me. I did abandon you. I called it duty, told myself it was necessary, but the truth is I was a coward. You needed your mother and I gave you political expediency instead. You gave me Alexander. By accident. If I'd been choosing for your happiness rather than political advantage, I might have chosen differently. I got lucky, you got lucky, that he turned out to be worthy of you. They sat together as twin suns set, mother and daughter with years of hurt between them finally beginning to heal. I need to ask you something, the queen said, something important. Yes. Would you consider returning to the Empire, you and Alexander and the children? Elindra tensed. We've built life here, safety, anonymity, peace. I know. And I wouldn't force you. But Elindra, these children are royal bloodline. They deserve to know their heritage fully, not just through stories I tell in gardens. And you, the queen's voice softened, you deserve to be more than exiled princess. You deserve to be recognized for what you are, mother of miracles who represent our species' future. The court would never accept hybrid heirs. The court will accept what I tell them to accept. I am still queen. And these children carry royal blood, validated by succession laws that specify bloodline rather than species purity. They are legitimate. Mother, it's not that simple. Nothing worthwhile ever is. The queen took her daughter's hand. Give me time to prepare. Let me shift attitudes, lay groundwork. Then come home, not as the barren princess returning in shame, but as mother of the children who changed everything. Let me give you the welcome you deserve. Elindra considered. The idea of returning to court, facing the nobility who'd whispered about her defect, introducing her children to a world that might reject them, it was terrifying. But it was also possibility of reclaiming what she'd lost, of proving that her barrenness had been gift in disguise, of showing that her children were not aberrations but evolution. I'll discuss it with Alexander, she said finally. Of course, it must be both your decisions. That night, Elindra and Alexander talked late into the night. What do you want? He asked simply. I want our children to know their heritage. I want them to be proud of both parts of themselves, human and Valorian. And yes, part of me wants to return to court not as the broken princess who was sent away, but as someone who found what they said I couldn't have. Then we go, just like that. Just like that. Elindra, you've given me family I never expected. You've loved me despite every reason not to. If returning home is what you need, then we go, together as we do everything. She kissed him with gratitude and love. "I don't deserve you. You deserve everything, and we'll make sure our children know they deserve everything too." Before the queen departed, she had final family dinner with all of them. The table was set with both Valorian and human foods, the children eating enthusiastically from both cuisines. "I want all of you to come home," the queen said formally. "Not immediately. I need to prepare the court, shift attitudes. But soon. Our family belongs together." "Even me?" Alexander asked. "Especially you. You are father of royal heirs and husband who loves my daughter genuinely. That makes you family regardless of species." Lyra, understanding more than they realized, spoke up. "Will people like us there, grandmother? Mama says we're different." The queen knelt before her granddaughter. "You are different, little one, but different doesn't mean wrong. Different means special. Different means you carry the best of two peoples, and anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about. Promise. I promise. I will make sure everyone knows how precious you are." Lyra hugged her grandmother, her small markings glowing with trust. The queen departed with promises of regular communication, real communication this time. She took genetic data and medical reports, yes, but also hundreds of images of her grandchildren and memories of laughter that she'd store in her heart. On the journey home, she composed her official report. It would announce that Princess Elindra had produced healthy hybrid children, that human Valorian genetics demonstrated compatibility that challenged everything they knew, that these children were not just royal heirs but symbols of evolutionary possibility. The report's release caused exactly the uproar she expected. Traditionalists protested, progressives celebrated, scientists demanded access, politicians positioned themselves. Through it all, the queen stood firm. 2 years of careful preparation followed, attitude shifting, policy adjusting, narrative controlling. The queen worked tirelessly to ensure that when her daughter returned, she'd be welcomed properly. Finally, the day arrived. Elindra and Alexander's ship descended toward the Empire's capital with children pressed against viewports, excited to see their grandmother's world. The welcome ceremony was grand, perhaps too grand for children who'd grown up on quiet colony world. But Lyra and Kale handled it with remarkable grace, their hybrid features drawing countless stares that they met with quiet dignity. Princess Elindra stood before the Valorian court, her children beside her, her husband at her side. Her markings glowed with proud colors as she addressed the assembly. "I stand before you not as the barren princess you pitied, but as mother of miracles. My children represent not the failure of Valorian genetics but the expansion of their potential. Human Valorian compatibility isn't dilution of bloodline, it's strengthening through diversity." The response was profound. Scientists presented findings showing hybrid genetics might actually be healthier than pure bloodlines. Politicians recognized the alliance's increased value.